Good morning, all starships in the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta quadrants. This is New Frontiers, a review show about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, here on the Movers and Shakers Unlimited Network. I am your host, head of the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group, Josh Pritchett. My pal and cohort and co-host, Mr. Chris Pabone, is taking a well-deserved day off. So it's just me today, but I will be joined later this hour by friend of the show and senior reporter for Friends of Comic-Con, Mr. Michael P. And so right now, we were not expecting this, but we now have 2 episodes this week to review. This was dropped on us by our good friends at Comic-Con yesterday when they aired the latest episode, Those Old Scientists, which has been the big, much-anticipated crossover of Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds. So we're going to get into that. But first, we are going to get into this week's first episode, Lost in Translation. A phenomenal episode that allows Carol Otis Gooding, who plays young Ensign Uhura, to really shine, and also marks the return of Mr. Paul Wesley as Lieutenant James Tiberius Kirk. So, without further ado, let's hit it and get into it. So, the Starship Enterprise is heading to a stellar nursery, which is rich in deuterium, which is the fuel that the starships like the Enterprise and Federation, Klingons, Romulans, whoever, catch and convert over to antimatter to cause the fission reaction in the dilithium chambers of all starships to give them power. So the Federation has set up a refinery at this particular stellar nursery because it's right on the edge of Gorn space, but it's also on the edge of unexplored space. So it's basically going to be a giant glorified gas station. Uhura is at her station and suddenly hears a very weird transmission, or thinks she does. When she tries to replay it, it won't come up on the speakers. So eventually she decides to go down to check the subspace antennae. And while she's doing that, she's watching a training video that she made with Lieutenant Commander. This episode also remarks the return of Bruce Horrick, playing Lieutenant Commander Hammer, who of course passed away last season in last season's episode, episode last season. But this year he has returned just for this episode, thankfully. So she's watching this video with Hammer, and trying to, remember how to, what he showed her about fixing the antenna, but also reliving these happy memories she had. Then she decides to head back up to the bridge, and while she's on the turbolift, she sees a zombified version of Hammer waiting for her in the turbolift. We then cut to the opening credits, and in the next scene, Uhura is in sickbay. Dr. Mbenga is examining her and has determined that she is suffering from a combination of deuterium poisoning and also a lack of sleep. She's been working very hard the last few days and has had very little time for rest. So he orders her to go to bed, and while she is sleeping, she then has a nightmare about the death of her family, which is, we found out they were killed in a shuttle accident. And so she's seeing this, and she's also still seeing visions of Hammer. Then meanwhile, James Kirk beams aboard the Enterprise and is greeted by his brother Sam, who serves as a xenobiologist aboard the Enterprise. They end up in the Enterprise's bar area, and at first it seems like they're having a very pleasant drink, but then Sam gets upset because he feels like their father is overly judgmental about him and his career choices. And they get into an argument, and Sam leaves. But then Uhura comes in. She sits down next to Kirk, and Kirk tries to talk to her and sees that she's very agitated. And then she leaves the bar, where she has another vision in the hallway of all the crew members being dead, and then finding herself fighting herself. But then she steps out of the vision and realizes she's fighting with Kirk. So Kirk decides he's going to help her because he realizes that this is not typical behavior of her and that she needs a friend. And she explains these visions she's having, and Kirk resolves to assist her and try to figure out what's going on here. Meanwhile, over at the refinery, Commander Una is trying to supervise the repairs, and she is kind of, butting heads with Carol Kane's character. And we find out later that Una took Carol Kane's engineering class at the academy and felt as though she got a grade that she didn't deserve. But apparently our chief engineer has realized that there's something else really wrong with this, and resolves that, going against Commander Chin Riley's orders, she decides that she is going to check everything, including all the stuff that seems to be working. She then says that she has found evidence of sabotage. Meanwhile, back aboard the Enterprise, Kirk and Uhura are trying to suss out her visions, and they're starting to get worse and more frequent. On the refinery, Chin Riley and Carol Kane and the security team find that one of the Starfleet officers who was assigned to the refinery is apparently been sabotaging the refinery and has had some sort of nervous breakdown. They get him back to the Enterprise, where he's being examined, and it is determined that he can't even really understand speech. His mind has been very damaged by the visions he has been receiving. Suddenly, the officer breaks free of custody. He injures M'Benga with a laser scalpel. Pike and a security guard take off after him, followed by Kirk and Uhura. And basically what happens is the junior officer manages to go up a Jeffries tube into the port nacelle and is trying to blow out the nacelle, which will damage, of course, the Enterprise, but will release the deuterium that the Enterprise has just absorbed into its nacelles from the nebula. Uhura gets there and tries to reason with him, but he's too far gone. Kirk arrives, realizing that the nacelle is about to blow, orders himself and Uhura to be beamed off, to be out of the area, and the part of the nacelle that is absorbing the deuterium explodes. Meanwhile, back on the refinery, Chin Riley and Carol Kane are still bouncing heads off one another, but trying to work together so that they can get the refinery up and running. Uhura worries that she is going to go as insane as the officer who just died. Kirk has vowed that he will not let that happen. And then suddenly Uhura she confides in him about losing her family and losing Hemmer. And Kirk says that, we can't give up fighting against death. And Uhura realizes that what is going on? She has an epiphany looking back on one of the videos that Hemmer made for her, that the areas of speech and communication are what is being affected in both her brain and the officer who had the breakdown. And utilizing Kirk's help along with his brother Sam, they determined that there is a subspace alien which has merged with the deuterium in the nebula and is causing these visions to occur. So Uhura tells Pike that they need to shut down the refinery and they need to vent all the deuterium on board the the Farragut and the Enterprise, and they have to destroy the refinery to release these aliens. So, which ultimately they do. On the way back to the Enterprise, Una and Carol Kane are talking, and Carol Kane explains that she doesn't think it's the reason that Una resents her is because of the sea. It is because the fact that she has replaced her friend Hemmer, and she understands that. And they sort of come to sort of a peace on this. Meanwhile, back at the Enterprise, Kirk and Uhura are enjoying a drink at the bar, and Uhura is showing some pictures of her family to Kirk. Sam comes over, and it's pretty obvious he's still quite irritated at Kirk for doing so well, and that making him look bad in the eyes of their father. And then he storms off, and Kirk confides that he finds his brother to be, and Spock finishes this, irritating. And at that moment, we have the first actual meeting between James T. Kirk and Mr. Spock. And the three of them sit down together and begin a lifelong friendship that will reshape the course of the Federation and Starfleet. They just don't know it yet. Which now takes us into our next episode, which is called Them Old Scientists, or These Old Scientists. The title is a reference to, as many of you fans might know, that we often refer to the original Star Trek series as Star Trek the Original Series, or Star Trek TOS. So it's a play on that use of those letters. So the episode starts off in the late 24th century aboard the USS, aboard the Cali class starship that our characters from Lower Decks serve aboard. And the Cerritos, sorry folks, I'm having a morning here. And our friends are kind of lounging around the Lower Decks area where they live. And they are going down to this planet, which has not been visited for over 120 years, initially by the Enterprise under the command of Captain Pike. And apparently there's some sort of ancient alien device there that they examined. And so our characters go down there, and Boimler wants a picture. Oh, but first I need to back up. I'm sorry. Tendi confides that the Orions were the ones who actually discovered this particular alien device. And Boimler's a little bit dubious because, let's face it, the Orions are not really known for being great scientists. They're just known for being pirates. So Boimler asks to have a picture taken, thinking that maybe Spock stood right there. And suddenly the device activates, and he is sent back in time to when the Enterprise first found this particular device. And he then meets Spock and many of his heroes. And he, of course, is just very freaked out. So we cut to the credits, but the credits have been redone. So they look like the animated stuff that we usually see on Lower Decks, including having that giant parasite thing stuck to the Enterprise's nacelles. So that's really kind of cool. Cutting back to the episode, Boimler is examined by Mbenga, and after they look over his clothes and tech, they realize that, yes, he is a time traveler from the future. But they keep telling him, look, don't tell us anything. We don't want to know anything. They do want to know things, but if he tells them stuff, he might change the course of their futures and might destroy his own. So Boimler's trying to be quiet, but guys, this is Boimler. Being calm and subtle is not his forte, okay? So so obviously the Orions show up, and of course the Enterprise is, going to battle stations, but Boimler says, Captain, I don't think they're pirates. I think they're here as explorers. And so Pike decides, okay, to talk to them, and it turns out that yes, the Orions are part of the Orion Science Division. They are not the pirates. However, they decide to steal the device anyway and fly off, which Boimler is begging them not to shoot it because if they shoot the Orion ship, they could harm Tendi's ancestor. Okay, so they have to go try to get the device back, and they manage to do it because Boimler knows a way to track the Orion ship, but it's using a 24th century bit of know-how. So the bridge crew all have to turn around and pretend he's not lying on the floor, pulling cables out and readjusting things, which he is. It's quite a funny scene, and he is able to track down the Orions. So they have to make a deal. The Enterprise is carrying a whole bunch of specially genetically altered grain for this colony, so they have to trade the grain for the device. And they take the device back to the planet. They manage to get it working, but before Boimler can go back through, Mariner comes through. Uh-oh! And that exhausts the power supply of the device. Well, so now we have both Mariner and Boimler, and if you think Boimler is bad at subtlety, yeah, Mariner takes it up to 11. So, yeah, she's freaking out because now she's getting to meet her hero, Uhura, and gets to work with her on trying to translate the glyphs on the portal because obviously those of us who are also Stargate fans know that there are, of course, going to be glyphs on the portal, obviously. So, meanwhile, Spock and Boimler are trying to make an artificial version of this element, which is the power supply for the portal, and it doesn't work out very well. And also, Boimler is noticing that Spock is not how he pictured him because Spock keeps trying to laugh and smile, especially when Nurse Chapel is in the room. And Spock says that he is on a course where he is trying to integrate his emotions. And Boimler is not sure this is a good thing. He's not sure if he should tell him that's not how we remember Spock. And then, of course, Boimler does meet with Chapel and tries to subtly explain to her that, you know, this is not how he's supposed to be, but there's something different going on with this. And meanwhile, Uhura, and with the help of Mariner, because Mariner has gone up against the Nausicaans, Mariner has realized that the symbols are in fact a form of ancient Nausicaan. Now, those of you who are longtime fans of Star Trek know that the Nausicaans are, of course, you know, some of them were the ones that actually stabbed Captain Picard and are the reason that he has an artificial heart. Or, well, he's had 2 artificial hearts now, but let's not get into that right now. And Picard, the Nausicaans, apparently at one point they were a much more advanced civilization, but something has happened in the not too distant past and has kind of caused them to devolve or a little bit, or their technology level has deteriorated. So they're not a great galactic power. But using this knowledge, they begin to figure out how to make the device work, but they still don't have any of this element. And then suddenly Mariner remembers that that particular element was used in the design of the Enterprise NX-01, Captain Archer's ship. And so they have to get some deuterium sorry, let me back up, folks. they used parts of the Annex 01 in the design of NCC 1701. So they find some of this particular element and are able to get the portal open. Meanwhile, the Orions have returned, but they're pretty frustrated. And so Boimler points out that one of their friends is an Orion and uses Tendy's Orion title, which is Mistress of the Winter, which surprises the Orion captain. And he realizes that, yeah, they're telling the truth because one of his crew members is a Mistress of the Winter, which is a big high-ranking thing in Orion culture. So they, Orions and the Enterprise, agree to work together to get the portal going. And Mariner and Boimler go back home to the late 24th century. And we find out that Boimler actually has a poster in his bunk of Una, but it's a recruitment poster, and which he did tell her about before he left the Enterprise. And Una was both, perturbed that they told her about the future, but very happy to know that she plays a significant role, that she's a hero to so many people. And in the final scene, the crew of the Enterprise have all become animated characters while enjoying some Orion beverages that they managed to trade with the Orions to get. And it's really a funny scene. Spock's arms start doing stuff, and everybody's wondering, what is different about us? There's something different. What are we drinking? And that is where our episode ends. And in a moment, I believe our friend Michael B. is going to be joining us and playing along with us for the good, the bad, and the Gorn. Meanwhile, I'd just like to add that for those of you who are in the know, Fairfax Comic Con is coming up the last weekend of August. Right now, Jonathan Frakes is still coming, but may not be able to answer any questions about Star Trek. But he will be signing autographs, I think. We will see. Keep you posted. Either way, please come out and consider supporting Fairfax Comic Con. They'd love to have the business. There will be lots of other guests involved in the comic book business, and there'll be a number of dealers selling trade paperback comic books, classic comics, and other things like that. So, still think about coming out to Fairfax. We'll post information about that here and on our website. We hope to see you there. And also, in the meantime, I'd just like to add that if anyone is interested, the Northern Virginia Star Trek meetup group, one of the oldest meetup groups in the Virginia area, is still always looking for new members. If you're interested in joining, please come find us on meetup.org ask to join us on our Facebook group, which is also called the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group Facebook page. So now it is, I think, Michael. Here Michael is coming in to join us. Michael, can you hear us? 1 second. Okay, well, we're just going to stand by. He'll be joining us momentarily. And we'd love to hear viewer comments. I really want to thank a lot of people who commented last week, and hopefully you're watching us again, or that you'll watch us again later on YouTube. And let's see how we're doing here. Give him a minute. Okay, here's our producer, Mr. Brandon Troy, the man who makes this all happen. And he is at Comic-Con. Here's Michael. Michael, good morning. How is San Diego treating you?
To be perfectly honest, okay, I talked to Tony Kim, and one of the things that Tony Kim said was that is that it's subdued. It's great. You can get on the floor. You can actually walk on the floor. You don't flow with the crowd. You can actually walk. But the energy level is very subdued. the number of people, there's probably about 20,000 people less, so somewhere in that range. I'm looking at our producer over here, but the reality is you can tell the difference, but it's still fun. They still have wonderful panels. And by the way, I went to the Ghost panels. Hint, hint, hint. You should have come. Okay, it was
hint, hint, hint to Cap.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and people enjoyed it. It's just fun being there with your peeps and you're watching the thing at the same time. And by the way, I saw the new Star Trek. I know I don't know if I'm supposed to mention that or not.
I just did the recap. You're good. Yeah.
He already recapped.
You should have been here with your peeps. The audience was just roaring with laughter and they got all the jokes, and it was just just the energy level was wonderful. It's like, dude, you would have been in your element.
Yeah, I coming to San Diego Comic-Con is one of those dream things I hope to do one of these years, and I know I would fit right in. I would really like to come and be dressed up in my Klingon gear and walk the convention floor with everybody else. It's just the stars and personal finances have not aligned in my favor. So, but one day it will. But sorry, Michael, go ahead.
I used to do when I was much, much younger. And what I would do is this is not financial advice. Okay, first of all, this is not financial advice. But what I would do is I would withhold on my taxes purposely, right? And then I get the refund, and I use the refund money to travel.
Yeah.
And it was a forced savings. You couldn't touch the money. And see, and it worked. I went on a whole bunch of trips using tax refund money. Now, like I said, that's not financial advice. I'm not a financial planner, right? But I'm just saying, as a kid,
we do not endorse that advice.
We do not endorse any financial advice. We're purely an entertainment channel, folks.
Otherwise, they come after you.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna hope that nobody from the IRS or anybody else is going to quite. But at any rate, Michael, we've invited you today to come aboard and play a little thing we call The Good, the Bad, and the Gorn, and it's somewhat self-explanatory. We talk about what was good about this week's 2 episodes, what we really liked, we thought worked. We can mention things that were not so good, and then in the Gorn, we talk about some of the deeper meanings that what we found in the episode. And since you are our guest, would you like to start off with some of the good things you liked about both episodes?
Well, no, I want to hear what you had to say first, because I missed that part because I just got here. So just get me caught up on what you were thinking.
Okay, we can do that. Okay, what I think the best thing I liked about the episode Lost Translation is how well Carol Otis Gooding carried the entire episode. She was brilliant. She's a brilliant actress. I love the fact that Bruce Horrick came back, even though he was playing a ghost hallucination version of Hemmer. It was great to see him back. I was very unhappy about the fact that his character departed at the end of season 1. He really had become one of my favorite characters. And like many fans, we miss him greatly. Just when we were really getting to know him. But it was good to see him back. I will add that I think Paul Wesley's version of Lieutenant James T. Kirk is really growing on me. I think he definitely plays it a lot differently than either Chris Pine or William Shatner did. I have been enjoying the furtherance of the Spock Nurse Chapel story arc. Wondering where that's going to go. I did enjoy a lot of the, brotherly issues between Sam and Jim. And I also forgot to mention there was a scene where Lillian and James run into one another, and obviously she still has a lot of intense feelings towards him. Moving on to those old scientists, what was there not to like? I mean, I think we've been really excited about this episode since it was first announced last year that there would be this crossover. We were going to get to see Boimler and Mariner aboard the Enterprise, meeting Pike and Spock and Una and the rest of the crew. The team, the actors are so good, especially Tawny Newsome. She is so awesome in anything you put her in. She's not just a great voice talent or a comedian, she's a great actress. So it was really wonderful to see them play that in person for the first time. I'm finding this new direction with Spock to be very entertaining, like him trying to smile and laugh, thumbing his nose at Vulcan civilization, as it were. And that's pretty interesting. I love Pike's reaction. Another thing I really liked, and I forgot to mention in the recap, and I'm sorry about that, is you have this scene where Mariner and Boimler are talking with Pike in his cabin and, trying to figure out what to do. And Pike asked them to please stop trying to get everybody to throw him a surprise birthday party. He had been planning to go ice fishing on this moon, and he'd been in this doldrum because he was now officially 1 year older than his father had been when he died. And they all know what Pike's fate is because they come from the future and he's had that vision. And, and Beckett, I'm sorry, not Beckett. Boimler points out to him that he doesn't have many birthdays left. And wouldn't it be better to give his friends an opportunity to do something nice and have one more conversation? Like he wishes he could have one more conversation with his father. Because even though apparently their relationship was very tenuous, Pike would like to talk to his dad one more time. And, I thought it was really cool. And this show really had a lot of heart to it. It was it's definitely now made one of my top 5 of all time great Star Trek episodes. Michael, I'm going to shift it over to you now and ask you what you thought about it. Sorry, I've been talking too long.
No. You got me up to speed. Let's separate them out. The episode that was released first, the second one, which is the crossover. The second one, that was the crossover that happened, right? But
yeah.
The crossover one, let's separate it out. The first one I thought was a little bit too retro. Okay, it reminded me of previous Star Treks, and I don't think that they needed to do that. The crossover episode to me was, sitting there in the audience with all the people. To me, that's what Star Trek's all about. Because Jack Quaid is he not one of the most underestimated actors around?
He is.
Don't we? Didn't you feel his enthusiasm as Boimler? You were like, oh my God, he was so excited. But his heart, you could feel the heart in it. That episode to me exemplifies what Star Trek could, the full potential of what's possible. And those two coming into real life, Tawny, she was her, right? She had that energy, and she was like, oh, where's Uhura? I gotta hang out with her. Yeah, audience. We all loved it, and the energy. When she came on screen, the energy level of the audience went up. And it's like she's running around. We're all running around with her. It's like, oh my God.
Well,
you needed to have been there. You would have been over the moon. And dear God in heaven, if those actors had been there, we would have given them a standing ovation. Because I remember back in New York Comic Con when they showed us the first episode of The Watchmen, that was on HBO.
Yeah.
Lord, people roared and stood up as Regina King came on stage. We all rose up spontaneously and gave her a standing ovation because it was so awesome. That's how that felt. People were applauding. I tell you, if the stars had been there, they would have got a standing ovation.
Oh yeah, I know, and this is why we need to keep putting the heads of Paramount's feet to the fire on this, because they're the ones causing this problem. Okay, it's not the actors, it's not the writers, it's the people in the front office that are hurting Star Trek. Okay.
Well, we had a discussion. I went to one of the panels. This is a little bit of a side issue, but it's not. And what we talked about is what they're squeezing the writers and the actors, and these are the low level people who don't make that much money, right? Because the top level stars, they can dictate, okay? But the regular folk like us, they can't dictate. And if you look at all the incredibly bad decisions these idiots at the top have made, they literally have cost their companies billions to tens of billions to, I would say cumulatively $100 billion. And we actually talked about this, and it's really sad that they want to take that out on the people's back who do all the work and make it possible, who did make those bad decisions. So that's a side issue. But going back to the show itself, it was one. I cannot tell you how wonderful it was seeing it with everybody and just seeing it for the first time. And seeing them in real life, crossover, it was absolutely believable. They were the characters, and it was wonderful seeing it. I mean, that's not the good, that's the great. Okay, we gotta call it the great. Okay,
that is the great, because I mean, this is one reason I still like to go to movies on opening weekend. Mike is I like that fan energy. I had to go see Avengers Endgame the night it opened. I had to go down and watch it, even though I was going to watch it 2 or 3 more times that weekend. I was like, no, I got to be there, and I was not disappointed. I just enjoyed. I absorbed that fan energy. And
when Falcon said, "Cap, look behind you," and
on your left, Cap,
the audience spontaneously just and yelling and screaming, right?
Yeah,
level you only get with live performances and stuff.
And then the audience, when Cap yells, "Avengers assemble!" everybody exploded. It's like we've been waiting a decade for him to say that, and we finally got there. But getting back to Star Trek here. I just want to say that I overall, I kind of thought at first with the episode Lost in Translation that, we kind of done the theme of meeting aliens we can't readily identify and causing in something. We've seen that done a few times, Trek, but, thinking about it, we kind of, most fiction, most genre fiction, you have a tendency to retell some things, but I think the way the direction they took it was excellent. And I think it really furthered the story. And for me, I love the scene where you've got Kirk and Spock shaking hands, and they did it so well. They did that, zeroed in on them shaking hands for the first time, because it's like, we all know, something big's about to happen here. This is something huge that's going to change both their lives and the lives of billions of people, this friendship.
The best part about that is reminding us that the good thing that Star Trek reminded us always of is that, we have to get out of our own headspace. That these aliens won't, they are aliens, and we got to remember that, And so I think that's the good part about that one, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much you're following this, Michael, and I'm sure you could find some people in San Diego who could talk to you about this if you wanted to follow up on this. But getting into the Gorn right now, the whole thing, and I love the scene how we saw the ram scoops. I know they called them something else on the Enterprise were working, because we've heard about them before, that they scoop up particles, in this case deuterium, to convert it to antimatter to power the ship. And I'm glad we got to see those working, but it got me to thinking about something, and I've been following this in the news, that there's a huge debate in California about desalination plants, about building these large plants, and I know they already have one they have never used, and just taking water directly out of the Pacific Ocean, desalinating it, and making it drinking water, water for irrigation and things like that. And there's been a huge debate between environmentalists and other people about doing that. I mean, about whether or not, you take the risk of capturing sea life and the food supply of larger sea creatures like whales and sharks, possibly getting caught in these things. And I know that's been a huge discussion in California right now. I don't know if you followed that, but that got me to thinking about it. And I wondered maybe the writers were inspired by that a little bit. Mike, what do you think?
That seems very science fiction-y, which is the best sort of science fiction. When we discuss current events, but we put it in a science fiction kind of world. But
Yeah.
you know, there's a bigger issue going on there too, because with climate change, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing the ice caps melt. Well, the problem with the ice cap melting, of course, is that's all fresh water, and of course, eventually, what that does is it decreases the the salt in the oceans too, right?
Yes.
And so if we start taking huge amounts of water out to for desalinization plants, it's just adding. It's like we're adding insult to injury. And so there's it's a complex system, and we're looking at a very narrow thing here of what we're doing. But in the broader thing that we're doing, this is going to be really major. And my question is, has anyone thought that through? There's some, I'm sure, violent environmental scientists who've told them, but you have politicians and you have thinking people.
Yeah,
I say that deliberately, and so you've got to. It's one of those things that's a difficult questions, but it's wonderful that Star Trek. That's, to me, that's if the Gorn part is a thinking part, then that really is that, because it should have us thinking.
Well, no, and I think that's the thing about Star Trek. You have these people who say that, Star Trek's gone woke. Well, dude, Star Trek's been woke since it debuted in 1966. Gene Roddenberry was asking all these big questions back then, and then we were putting it into a science fiction show about these people exploring space, and that was a metaphor for exploring the human condition, and we're still exploring that condition over 55 years later.
The first interracial kiss. Remember what a controversy that was? It's like, oh my God, that was woke. I mean, that was woke squared or woke cube, right? But now we just go like, oh, but if you listen to the people who whatever,
the fact that you have now non-binary characters, not just somebody like say Jadzia and Ezri Dax, who had been both men and women. But at that point we're living as females, even though they had memories of being men. But now with the characters on Discovery and also on Strange New Worlds, and then of course a lot more LGBTQA representation is going on.
Well, but what I find interesting is that Kirk could kiss a green lady, but Kirk kissing a black lady, it's like, you remember that? People lost their minds. They literally lost their minds, and it's like people lose their minds over nonsensical stuff, because eventually, if you think about the bigger issue, is that us going into space. In fact, I had a conversation about this the other day with someone here at Comic-Con. Us going into space, all of a sudden, us fighting or something becomes very trivial when someone can come through with a planet buster and just knock your planet out of its orbit and stuff. These things, we should have a better perspective, but we don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I'm not the biggest fan of Ronald Reagan. Not to get too political here, I'm not the biggest, but he once had a conversation with Mikhail Gorbachev. And those of you know Reagan's filmography, he did a lot of B science fiction films before he got into politics. And Reagan made this remark about, wouldn't it be something if an alien species invaded our world? I bet we'd all suddenly put aside all our differences. And he said this to Gorbachev, and and he asked, if aliens invaded the United States, you'd come to our aid, wouldn't you? And because if it happened to you, we'd come help you. And Gorbachev says, well, yeah, I guess I would have to come help you. I mean, we couldn't let aliens from another planet, and I think Gorbachev was very perplexed by this, that, believe it or not, the Soviet Union did have science fiction movies back then. There were science, I don't know if they were all, anything like what we made here in the United States, but they did have science fiction in the Soviet Union. So I think that, yeah, what you're saying is, yeah, if we had aliens, we had something like Independence Day happen, where aliens come in and blow up the Empire State Building or something. I imagine that, yeah, a lot of humans would very quickly put aside a lot of the differences in religion and gender and our personal animosities to try to come together to do something about that. At least I hope we would.
There you go. I hope so too.
Yeah,
but you know what? Never discount the stupidity of people.
yeah. Well, it's that goes back to what George Carlin said: never underestimate the stupidity of a large group of people.
He's wrong, though, right?
He was correct. Yes, I think. And
if you look back, they're putting clips of him now, and and the whole point is, the issues that we face now. Some people, they always say, oh, they're talking about the same stuff we're doing. Well,
yeah.
But if you look back 1,000 years, we've progressed technology wise, right? But socially, we're still some.
No, we definitely still need a lot of work on. I mean, I think we've gotten better in certain respects, but I think when you have issues like what we've had in the last couple of years with some of this, and I want to get back to Star Trek here in a minute, Michael. I'm enjoying our conversation, but
no, we got to stop it.
No, I mean, Star Trek is about these issues, and as we faced here in the season opener with the Trala Una.
Well,
and her being this genetically enhanced person, that was, her personhood, her right to decide for herself. Yeah.
Well, but see, that was the thing. But see, that's the point about Star Trek. It got us talking. That's the whole point about that's how good the show is. Look how we started a whole conversation, and that's the point I think of the original Star Trek and the current Star Trek. It's to start a conversation so we actually have conversations about these issues and we can talk about them intelligently with other people. We have one thing in common. Let's work from that common point of view and see, what we think. And it starts what I believe is a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, it's nice, but I think at the same time, you also have a lot of people on social media who are in the real world are socially awkward, but they get on social media and they feel like, hey, wait, you can't see my face. You don't know who I am. And they will just blatantly attack somebody. They'll, a friend of mine, he got said a lot of nasty things directed at him yesterday by somebody. And,
Well, my thing is with these anonymous people, so-called anonymous people who apparently half of them aren't even alive or human. No, seriously. I mean, they're bots, right? And so you're getting mad at a machine that doesn't really care. It's just going to keep spouting this stuff because it's an algorithm. And so the more you spout back at it, the nastier things it says because it's getting a reaction. And the algorithm, it's the people who design it say, well, if they keep going on, then you just get nastier because you get more responses that way. So you just have to be very careful,
That's cut into one of the core things about the writers and actors strike is this use of AI technology. Is the studios want to scan these extras and reuse them in TV shows and movies in perpetuity without ever paying these people again for that. And then there's the threat of AI being used to just write TV shows and scripts. And I forget the name of the big one that people have been talking about, but certainly the head writer at Black Mirror tried it using an AI, and he said the script he got was so awful that it was just a ripoff of stuff they'd already done, but it was so bad there was no way they would have ever used it.
Well, yeah,
but that doesn't mean that it won't get better in 10 years or 5 years, or next year. Well,
it eventually keeps working on it, but the whole point is, as someone pointed out, it can emulate what a good writer does, but it'll never have the heart. So again, we go back to the Star Trek episode where we had the crossover. Those two characters, Jack, the heart. Remember we talked about the heart. you look at this, you look at these artificial things, and the best of them so far. Yeah, they're going to get better, but you look at them, it's the greatest actors, and I'll go off to my favorite show, my other favorite show. Okay, but
Okay.
my other favorite show. But I interviewed one of the actors. And she played Avasarala, and she talked about as she played that particular role, how she would have the tears form in her eyes, but she would never let them drop. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, AI is not going to. They may eventually do it, but the thought that went into that and the heart that went into that, humans have it. Machines
Yeah.
won't get it. You can tell the machine to act like it, and guess what? The machine will act like it, but you won't feel it. And it's like with Formula, we had that enthusiasm, right? We had that. It was exciting.
Oh no, you cannot replicate that with a machine. I mean, yeah, sure. There's been the whole thing where we've been able to put an actor from 50 years ago into a commercial. We've had that technology for a long, long time. It's just now we're not talking about, that was just sophisticated editing. Now we're talking about like, oh, let's make a whole new John Wayne movie by creating a synthetic John Wayne in a computer, and then we have John Wayne play himself. But anyway, Mike, we're about ready to wrap this up for the weekend. Okay. But listen, thank you for coming on board. Where can folks find you?
Well, thank you for having me. You can find me over at Friends of Comic-Con. I'm a senior writer over there, and my nom de plume is Mickle P. Okay, and hopefully you should get some articles about this Comic-Con and stuff.
Yes.
Too, okay?
Yeah, definitely. And as always, you can reach me at meetup.org at the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group. I'm on Facebook as Josh Pritchett Jr. and also on the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetups Facebook page. And once again, my book, The Adventures of Madison Brown, The Robot Repair Girl Chronicles, and also Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural are both still available on Amazon. And I have just recently been put in the Jefferson-Madison Regional Library System. So if anybody in the Albemarle County area is watching this, you should be able to check out my book in the next few weeks. In the meantime, we will be back again next week with my usual partner in crime, Chris Babone. At this point, I want to thank Michael P. again for stepping in, and look forward to reading your assessments of everything from Comic-Con. And hopefully one of these days I'll be able to join you there in person, my friend. In the meantime, everybody live long and prosper, and remember to eat bacon. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.